Welcome.
The Pathology Innovation Collaborative Community is a regulatory science initiative that aims to facilitate innovations in pathology, as well as advance safety and effectiveness evaluation. The PI Collaborative Community aims to harmonize approaches to speed delivery to patients through collaboration in the pre-competitive space. The PI-CC is open to all stakeholders, public or private, including but not limited to academia, industry, healthcare providers, patients, and advocacy groups. Meetings of this kind are an example of lawful activity under federal antitrust law, because the focus of the meeting is on government action or policy, including the industry's responses or positions taken with respect thereto. However, antitrust monitoring is needed for companies' own protection, since they are direct competitors meeting together. These meetings need to stay within protected subject matters and need to be monitored so that they do not stray off into inappropriate areas, such as pricing and price terms, sales and service territories for particular products, customers and customer territories, each company's individual decisions regarding selection of suppliers or customers, marketing plans and especially future marketing plans or new product offerings, other proprietary or competitively sensitive information. Today's meeting will follow the written agenda, and there will be no discussion of pricing or other prohibited topics. If the discussion veers into those topics, we will terminate the discussion. If you have any questions or concerns about the propriety of a discussion, please raise it immediately, and we will take a break to determine how best to proceed. The Medical Device Innovation Consortium acts as the formal convener, and we will follow their conflict of interest policy. For additional information, we defer to our Code of Conduct and our website, www.pathologyinnovationcc.org. We look forward to moving the field forward.
Hello, hello.
Good afternoon.
Hope everyone is having a good summer. Hi, Brandon. Hi, Esther. See Mariano, Scott, Kevin. Hey, Keith. Victor made it. Emma made it. Hey, Kim. Wonderful. I heard Noor, Emma, James, Neil. Great. Everyone's here. Okay. Oh, I see there's also something in the chat. All right. I'll see the slide deck is already in play, so we can get started. And I think the first topic, if I recall from prepping the slides, is that we wanted to briefly, for those who couldn't make it, recap the PI-CC first and annual meeting. And for those who missed it, a lot of the information is on the website under annual meeting. And I think the fastest way would be to ask for some of those who have been there to maybe talk a bit about what that was like. I know Brandon was there. I know Mariano. I know Kim made it. So yeah, we just wanted to briefly discuss and mention for those who didn't make it what the vibe was, etc. Kim, what was your impression just for this group here?
Actually, it was just absolutely a fantastic. It was fantastic gathering of minds. I say like-minded, individuals who really came together to output something that was actionable. So in our space, we were more so like really looking for Brandon Gallus and myself. We're really looking at, what we needed to push forward for the statistical tools, so to speak. And, as we came out with the specific, ideas of what.
You're muted.
Kim, you're muted.
Look,
Oh.
that's a heavy mute.
While I think Kim is joining back, I don't know, Mariano or Brandon, do you want to say a few words or mention to folks what you thought was noteworthy?
So yeah, I think it all is about how we finished, and it was all building to having some plans to do something together. That's really why I like this space. ICC in general is to try and find things that we can do together. It's a great place to share information, but to really have impact, I think we need to do something. And I think we talked about some good ideas, especially about related to some real world data and real world evidence to try a pilot study to use case that not too big, not too crazy, but a limited scope of and try and build up a database in real time that could have some AI evaluation use. But and that's where pointing at some of the speakers, especially Alexander and his platform for putting together data providers and model developers so that model developers can get their models tested in what do you call it, that distributed kind of network. That to me seemed like a great idea.
Mariano, what did you think?
Yeah, I think from my side, it was really a great opportunity to bring all the stakeholders together. I mean, I think that really trying to understand the language, right? Developing that common dictionary that we can all use so that we can all communicate correctly in this regulatory environment, I think is a great opportunity. As we see the avalanche of AI applications, I think that we have to be cognizant of the impact on the regulatory side and how we can help so that we don't stagnate that process, but we really are enablers and partners with the regulators. So I think that bringing everybody together and understanding and how do we bring real world data from us that are doing it on a daily basis and understand what the other side needs and the evidence that they are looking for. So I think it's a really a great step in that direction, because I don't think I'm sure Brandon is thinking about how many AI applications are going to be hitting his desk every day. And how can we standardize that process to help the agency be better, and then also the submitters understand how to do it. So everybody working together in this ecosystem.
Thank you. Other comments from the group? So I know Noor, Andrew Tash, and MDIC, Ulla, if you go to the next slide, I think deserve a big shout out. So MDIC is, of course, our convener, and they organized the meeting, got the room, AV, and everything organized. So if you have access to your reactions, I recommend a little applause button, because that's a lot of work and a lot of orga. So on this day, of course, it's a little bit late, but I still wanted this on record that, of course, I hope I speak for the whole collaborative community when I say that we thank MDIC profoundly for organizing it. I don't know, Noor, if you wanted to say a few things about the meeting or recap or so.
Sure. Hi, everyone. It was great seeing everyone in person, and this was personally my first PICC event. So it was an amazing experience, and I hope to be able to host and plan more in the future. Just a quick apology for any shortcomings that we may have had, and please feel free to give feedback. We are always looking to improve from the MDIC's point of view as well as myself. So please feel free to reach out to myself or Jitesh if you'd like to provide any feedback. And again, it was an amazing opportunity to meet many of you, and thank you again for giving us the opportunity.
Thank you, Noor. So as a brief recap for those who couldn't make it, the second day, and you see a couple of the pictures here, people really sat down with their laptops on round tables and discussed certain topics, and those were arranged around so-called 4 breakout sessions. We've done this before in 2019, and on this slide here, you see the 4 topics that were basically selected and then ranked via Menti by the people in the room. So on rank 4 was the predetermined change control plan guidance and how to deal with this. Number 3 was statistical performance metrics and how to document that. And then digital diagnostic sign-out was a reworded breakout session that was previously termed a remote sign-out. But the group during the discussion felt that a digital diagnostic sign-out is more appropriate and a better wording. And then the winner in terms of what may have the largest regulatory science impact was a so-called real-world data collection. Now, for each of these 4 topics, we came up with sort of a SWOT type, so strength, weakness, opportunity, threat type sheet. And here is for the winning team. This, I mean, it wasn't like winning or losing, it was just the highest priority, but that's from one group just to show you. These slides were relatively simple in the beginning and then turned into actual really concrete plans. And, you know, since the predetermined aim of the meeting was to come up with one single sort of, or 1 or 2 big or larger scale projects, I wanted to share this with the group. So we will have a follow-up meeting, and we already have a lead. We get to that in a second. But I just wanted to encourage you, in case you're interested in PCCP or in digital diagnostics, or i.e. remote work, to go to the meeting page. I think Ulla pasted the link, and you can find these slides that basically represents the condensed material that these 4 groups with changing input from various people came up with. And if you're interested in those topics, I think that provides, I believe, a very good and overview from multiple vantage points. I think that was probably what we wanted to say about the PICC meeting. Any other comments or things that we may want to discuss here?
Next steps, what's we have any next steps on this, Joe?
Yes, which is, I think, the next slide. So as one element, which I know, Brandon, you helped trigger, was that on a biomarker meeting that was happening, I think, simultaneously with the PICC meeting, we couldn't attend. We didn't send, I think, a delegate from PICC to this group, but I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about this foundation from NIH. If you haven't seen it, please take a look at the website. If you go back one slide, Ulla, just in terms of like the, they have project, they have specific disease areas, and they so-called power sciences. So they have a lot of grants, they have funding, and they coordinate things that are all the way from basic science, all the way to public-private partnerships and really multi-stakeholder initiatives. And if, please take a look, I mean, FNIH, you will find that in Google easily. And, you know, I think Ulla already pasted it in the chat, perfect. That is something just to consider and to know about, and their publication section is actually really well done. So I just wanted to give a brief shout out. So luckily we have Brandon, who coordinated a meeting, and one initial meeting happened with some of the stakeholders from FNIH. To be specific, that was Dana Connors and Althea Lang. and I think Tatiana Murza, if I recall all of them, and we had a brief connection. We discussed what our aims are in PyCC, what FNIH works on, and I think we already narrowed down a few next steps. So the screenshot on the right shows part of a slide deck that FNIH presented for now internally about all the different programs that they have and what they can do. And I think it's a fair assessment, at least from my position, that there's a lot of synergies. There are several projects underway that already use digital pathology or morphometry and other topics. And I would say, and Ulla and Brandon, please chime in, I think there was definitely interest. So as a next step, we planned to have them present FNIH as a concept, their initiative, their scope, to PyCC as a dedicated meeting. So not just on the sideline of a steering committee meeting, but an actual dedicated 1-hour meeting to make sure that all membership of PyCC has a chance to look at it, and then provide them in return in a follow-up a project overview of what we decided in terms of like the real world data project and what other things we're looking for. So specifically, we will host a meeting. There were other synergies that we can briefly discuss, one with friends, we get to that in a few slides, and one other to potentially join us for visions. And then, you know, one other, of course, is that we have many collaborators that are initiating other projects. So that might be, you know, there might be multiple ways, but the main project, we're still looking for collaborators. So I would definitely say, you know, we haven't scheduled a meeting yet because of, you know, people being out, and we wanted to be avoiding that we schedule something during vacation time, etc. But I believe early September-ish, we will have this. And I think, I'm not sure whether they were able to make it today to this call, but I think the FNIH leadership will join one of our next steering committee calls. Brandon, did that adequately summarize the meeting? Or Ulla, did I miss anything?
Yeah, they definitely want to hear some of our challenges that we think we can address with a consortium type project. And so their biomarkers cancer steering committee is in November, and you know, on the way there, they're hoping that we share some of these ideas with them so that they can have it discussed at their steering committee. So I hope that we can try and turn that SWOT page into a skeleton of a proposal, and iterate a couple times with the folks, because first of all, they responded to my emails like the next day. They really were engaged and interested, and not just tolerating a phone call. They recognized that they had a gap in their portfolio that was really steered towards kind of the broader community. A lot of their efforts are on very highly technical biomarkers or technologies, and I think they heard a message from us that I heard at the meeting, which is labs are understaffed. The quality is not the same across all health providers. There are lots of health providers out there that would like a hand up into these technologies, but don't have the money and don't have the expertise. And so I think if we can wrap all of that up into something coherent that could create a pipeline drawing from these health providers that are not connected, that don't have the technology, they do have a lot of patients and they do have a lot of data. There's a nice opportunity for give and take in both directions. So I think that's the direction to focus on and iterate over the next couple of months, so that by November we have something ready to get some more critical feedback on, and hopefully propose it to the biomarkers consortium.
Perfect. So I think although it was happening in parallel, I think we managed to at least get the best of both meetings in terms of like interest from NIH, FNIH, and then also streamlining our collective thoughts into a project. So I agree, and the timeline till November sounds fairly doable. Okay, next topic. You could call this one of our payer strategy slides or summaries. It's actually multiple slides, but I just wanted to briefly point to things that I believe many of you have already seen, but maybe not in one set. So I wanted to showcase this. So first is a coding update. So as you know, last year, 13 CPT codes category 3 have been introduced. And then this year, an additional 30 for release in January 2024 have been released, thanks to all the different societies, CAP, Association for Pathology Informatics, and all the advocates that help with this. So briefly as a recap, what this means. So right now, with these collectively, I think it's a total of 43 codes that are in category 3 for now. There are, of course, covering all types of, let's call it applications, from routine histology and immunohistochemistry that was there last year, meaning that went live this year, January 2023. Now there will be cytopath, intraoperative consultation, smears, bone marrows, cytospins, you name it. And the important part is that if you do any or all of the above, you shall use those. And there are currently many category 3 codes in other disciplines. It's somewhat unusual in pathology. They're not used for CMS billing, but for volume tracking. And so it is actually a legal requirement to use those when you perform the procedures. And, you know, one of the experts on this topic, who is, you know, part of CAP, and I know we have CAP members on the call, is Stephen Blacksheffer. I can try to answer all the questions. I'm not the absolute expert, so that's why I put this there. And, you know, we have a plug later on the CAP advocacy website. Coming back to that, there's a full list, and, you know, there's also a webinar that CAP organizes around this. So this is definitely an evolution from the single 88361 code for HER2 quantification. Now, keep in mind, this is ultimately intended to be on the HCPCS, or, you know, so-called physician fee schedule, which is a healthcare common procedure, because everyone anticipates that digitization will move forward, and therefore this is considered similar to biopsy or, you know, different tiered coding in pathology. Now on the next slide, there's a parallel development, which I can report from the clinical laboratory fee schedule, and the voting results from the FACA panel have just been released. So this is to be discussed and determined in terms of pricing from CMS right now for release in January 2024. And it is important to briefly reflect on 2 new multi-analyte assays with algorithmic analyses. So these are 2 so-called MAAA codes, and these are specific proprietary laboratory assay codes. So you see in the 3rd column that X084U and X088U. And if you look at the description, those are both digitized whole slide imaging assays. So the first one is a specific lung assay where whole slide imaging is used to predict 8 genes, KRAS, G12C, and PDL1 from FFPE tissue, and it will be reported as positive or negative for each of those markers. The second test is an augmentative algorithm analysis, also from whole slide imaging, in this case breast, where 8 histologic and immunohistochemical features are reported as a recurrence score. So the one is basically histo to molecular, and the next one is basically histo and immunohistochemistry to a clinical measure. So this is probably the prelude to multiple people or multiple vendors, multiple test developers or laboratories assessing whether PLA codes are indeed a valuable resource or pathway towards financial sustainability. You see the FACA panel has completely crosswalked both over to 0220U, which is another PLA code. And I just wanted to mention that this is separate from the category 3 codes, and the pricing determination will happen over the next few months. So I would recommend, if you're in this area or in this field, to watch out what the price determination will be. And then a last element related to Digital Path is a quick update.
Hey, Joe, can I
Yes.
just interrupt real quick? The PLA codes, and this is my ignorance, that's not the same as category 3 codes?
No,
Or-
no.
I
So
guess I'm not familiar.
PLA codes are proprietary laboratory codes where a specific lab in one location typically has one specific test. So think about it like Tempus, Caris, Foundation Medicine, you name someone, and they have a specific test that they went through an entire process with the AMA to get a specific proprietary laboratory analysis code. So these PLA codes are not the classic, 8.8 codes or, 5 numerical CPT code range. So PLA codes are separately priced and they're assessed through the clinical lab fee schedule, and the dollar amount is attached there. The category 3 codes are preliminary codes for volume assessment before price setting.
And so these PLA codes, and you might have mentioned it, and finally it might have just occurred to me, but could PLA codes, let's say you develop a homebrew algorithm and you're able to validate it, could this be the pathway to getting it reimbursed if it's just individual to your institution?
Correct.
You have a robust enough AI algorithm, so this might be the way to get it reimbursed?
So to get a PLA code and get the PLA code priced, that's a separate process from any and all of the above. So these are two related topics. They're currently coexisting approaches towards reimbursement, but they're neither mutually exclusive, nor do you have to go through a PLA process. But a PLA process is already underway to price these out. Esther.
Unmute, yes. So Joe, is it also correct, how I understood it, that PLA codes can also be requested by vendors, right?
And with vendors, you mean laboratories, correct?
No, actually also when I joined the last reimbursement meeting where all these new codes were discussed, were a few vendors, also from digital pathology, asking for a PLA code and then a crosswalk.
So let's make it a little more concrete. If company X that does image analysis want a PLA code, that won't work. What can happen is, to my knowledge, PLA codes can only be requested by a clinical laboratory or by a manufacturer that offers the test. So, some companies are manufacturers, but they offer the test themselves.
Yeah, so maybe that's what they do.
If you distribute a kit or a kitted solution, that follows a different paradigm. But if you offer the test as a manufacturer or as a clinical laboratory, that would work. But I would definitely, that's a very intricate question. I would check the AMA resources for that.
Yeah, got it. Thanks.
Perfect. So quick note, just in continuation, I think last time and the time before we reported on the ability to continue remote sign out. And one element that came out that we forgot to mention, in June, we didn't have a proper steering meeting. It was on the website. But I just wanted to briefly point out that New York State, meaning the Clinical Lab Evaluation Program, or CLEP, has also enabled the review of digital results and digital images remotely under the conditions described below, and that's the bullet pointed list. I think this is almost identical, but I think 3 points were a bit more detailed. So a quick pointer to this resource, just to make everyone aware of that. Okay, so quick summary, a lot of stuff moving on the digital pathology side. So related to LDTs, and this is probably the most important message from the FDA side, at least after selection of many, many important things. But towards the end of June, this was just before our PICC meeting, and we discussed that briefly sort of during the PICC meeting, is that the FDA launched a so-called pilot program to start tackling LDT testing, meaning lab developed tests. Again, that's tests performed in one site. And if you look at that link, and I hope that, yep, Ulla pasted it already. If you move one slide forward, there's a certain specific focus that the FDA is looking at in this pilot program. So first of all, there is a guidance, or I think a draft guidance related to this, which is oncology drug products used with certain IVDs. So that's in vitro diagnostic testing. So all these words sound fairly familiar when you think about the VALID Act and regulation of IVD versus LDT. Then there is a whole set of Oncology Center of Excellence. So that's the OCE guidance documents about how to set this up correctly. There's a separate branch out to companion diagnostics, because, you know, companion diagnostics are, of course, enabling things, many with breakthrough designation, but the field is evolving so quickly that it is very hard to keep up with every single companion diagnostic as approved. So many sites choose or opt to use laboratory developed tests as surrogate tests. And this pilot program is assessing that. And as you see, the last link on the same page is basically used with certain pilot programs. So please take a look. It might be of interest for those of you who are very interested in companion diagnostics and the use and potentially participating in the program. It is probably not well known yet what that pilot program looks like. I think a webinar is planned. There was not a lot of details there, but certain labs will probably be selected. So we're probably looking for an update there. Whether or not that's related to the overarching LDT discussion, I highly doubt, but it might be related to the FDA's being interested in lab developed tests. So if you run LDTs and are interested, please take a look. Brendan, any comments on that? Or
No, I don't know it very well.
okay. The next item is 2 quick pointers. First, there's a new, or I would call it an updated study data on technical conformance assessment, and it's called a technical conformance guide that we just wanted to share. And in addition to one of the discussion papers that I believe many of you know, which is related to software as a medical device and AI, there's now using AI and machine learning in the development and drug and biological products. So this is not devices, but this is drugs and biological products. So slightly different, but it is nonetheless highly informative to learn from the drug and biological products space. And then 2 additional documents I wanted to highlight. One is the 2022 Office of Surveillance and Epidemiology annual report. So this is about risk management and mitigation and how things were assessed. So in case you're interested, please take a look. And then there's also the so-called rare disease cures and accelerating the work on that, which is called the ARC program, that gave a year 1 anniversary update. I think we mentioned the inception of the meeting. You see the zebra in the background there. So this is about how to potentially accelerate some of the innovations for rare diseases. So that is closely tied to, and many of the concepts that I read in there are related to the real world evidence and data program as well. So those were the quick pointers for that. Okay, legislative updates. I think there's one or two quick pointers that I wanted to briefly mention. So we hear a lot of rumors, nothing tangible, but about Valid, etc. It seems that is still moving forward. We mentioned the pilot program, but I wanted to mention something from the European side. So as you know, on the left side, PyCC has a lot of activities in the data for health space. I think several of the project leads are actually on the call. We have a data breach project, a national tokenization mechanism. We have worked on information blocking as well as privacy. And this summer was a meeting jointly organized with the German Federal Ministry of Health, and the health minister was entitled Data for Health Conference 2023. And it was a by invite only meeting of about 400 people. And if you move forward, Ulla, the 2-day event had a whole array of bar camp and breakout sessions with large high-level talks and discussions. The meeting started where usually the meetings end. There's very informative graphic recordings that illustrate some of the regulatory challenges related to AI and platforms, etc. So this was conceptualized in a way to move forward rather than just give talks and present findings. So similar to our PyCC meeting, but here specifically focused on data as a concept in general. If you're interested on the web link that Ulla just pasted, you can find fantastic podium discussions. So all of this is taped and adequately produced. It was also live streamed both days. And then one pointer on the top left, you see Robert Ice. He's one of the White House liaisons, and he's very high up in NIH, and he gave a phenomenal keynote speech on some of the strategies, how to overcome, for example, transatlantic data and privacy issues related to GDPR. And I wanted to mention this meeting briefly because that's one issue that is a legislative update. So if you move one forward. First, there's a big NIH, in this case, NCI, so from the National Cancer Institute workshop being planned. It is a 3-day event. So July 25, 6, and 7, both always half a day. First one is about privacy preserving AI. The second about patient engaged AI for biomedical research. And the third, ethics and inclusion of underserved communities. You see the NCI planning committee mentioned there. And the conference is titled actually, United States, European Union, how to engage in the AI world more for various reasons. And then as a second pointer, if you move forward, is that we have a follow-up meeting, which is called a Data for Health workshop. I'm glad to report that I got to help organize this jointly with Albert Hoffman from the T.H. Chan School of Public Health here in Boston. It will happen in September. And there are 4 tracks. One is dealing with privacy at the state level. Another one is crafting a transatlantic consent form for data exchange. There is an exploring a federated administrative model for transatlantic exchange that's presented from both sides. And then there's a brain-computer interface. So that's a very specific device, very cutting edge to see how to deal with data that are of that level of complexity. So these elements or these follow-up meetings are all evolving around one piece of the guidance or legislation, which is called an adequacy decision. So on the next slide, you will see, as we have discussed in this group before, GDPR versus HIPAA, or you can take other guidances, they're not quite aligned. The Privacy Shield 1.0 ended in a way, and in March of last year, the European Commission said that they're in the final stages of an adequacy decision. And then on July 10th this year, this adequacy decision came around. So the note on the bottom in yellow explains briefly what an adequacy decision is. And the document itself, which Ulla pasted, is fairly complicated. It's, I think, over 100 pages, and it details in excruciating detail on how to actually have similar protection on the EU and US side when exchanging data from left to right and right to left. Now, an adequacy decision is especially interesting for commercial entities. It is covering basically individuals. It can be applied to regulatory questions and to medical data, but health data is much, much more complicated. Nonetheless, in the slang, this is called the Privacy Shield 2.0. But as you know, Schrems decoupled that initially. We can discuss that separately, but this is likely going to provide a blueprint for this transatlantic data exchange. So this is a first step in the correct direction to enable European to US data exchange in terms of an adequacy decision. And in case you're interested there, happy to talk more. Just wanted to provide a brief pointer that is definitely, I don't know, a lot of initiatives coming together, and hopefully for the better for many patients. I quickly turn it over to Noor for an MDIC update. Noor?
Sure, thank you, Joe. A few MDIC updates for you all. We are hosting a 2-day in-person event in Bethesda, Maryland, and it's going to be specifically about MXR, which is medical extended reality. Please feel free to click on the link that Ulla pasted in the chat to learn more about this very exciting event. We hope to see many of you there. There will be a lot of FDA and top industry leaders as well that will be joining us. And then it's the month of promoting MDIC events. We are hosting our annual public forum, which is an annual event that we happen to have every single year. And this year it'll be in the Hotel Washington, which is an iconic landmark in Washington, D.C. It is occurring on September 19th through the 20th. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. It is an exciting event with a lot of key FDA and industry leaders that will be hosting fireside chats. People from BD, Medtronic, and other industry leaders will be joining us as well. So please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or would like to learn more. And lastly, just like we announced a few months ago before the in-person PICC event, MDIC has a new branch essentially, and it is called Advanced Manufacturing Clearinghouse. And we are looking to provide funding for any advanced manufacturing projects. So the specifics to apply to the funding can be found on the MDIC website. Please feel free to check it out. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me and I can connect you with the appropriate parties within MDIC that can further explain the project and what AMCH is working on at this time. And I will hand it back to you, Joe.
Thank you. Very active despite the summer. I love it. Okay, quick update from 2 of our professional societies. I think Jim already pasted the link earlier, but I wanted to make a quick plug to CAP. They've been very active in advocacy space, and the list of digital path codes I wanted to mention here because that is actually clearly currently tied closer to advocacy than to payment because it's category 3. And there are many other societies that have helped, but on that same link, you will find a webinar and several lectures and, you know, additional information. So quick plug here from CAP. And then one other group, of course, the Digital Pathology Association, quick pointer to the annual meeting, which is coming up in October. And that leads me to a question here, which is that traditionally pre-pandemic, we always had sort of an in-person meeting at the Visions Conference meeting in association, of course, with DPA, who's one of our co-founders, of course. And the question here to the group is, what do people think? Should we do a PyCC meeting there? Should we discuss just sort of a casual hangout, or should we do a half-day session with specifically attacking some of the regulatory questions? Yeah. Input question to the group. Jim.
Have you already contacted DPA regarding this? Because I know that they are, that CAP has a meeting a pre-conference meeting, and they requested our input for timing right away. So would you want to have this like as a pre-conference meeting, or in a like an informal session like afterward, like during the meeting?
I think I was mostly thinking about to discuss that with this group before we propose anything. I think previously we had the day before or the afternoon before with a few talks where people who are interested in regulatory science discuss things, but I'm completely open-minded. So Jim, if you have suggestions or if we want to couple it with something or separate, I have really no preconceived notions here.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I'll have to. We may have to talk offline regarding just timing and seeing if there's space to have a session.
What do people think? Nothing. It's late.
Well, I'm all for a get together if there's time, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't mean to suggest that it wouldn't be a good idea. I think it's a fantastic idea. I just, I don't want to create an expectation that we might not be able to have the meeting this year. Maybe we can, try it for next year in a formal session.
I mean, with UseCap and some of the CAP meetings, we just arranged that on one specific night we meet sort of at the main hotel lobby and then just self-organize and chat with those who are interested, right? That's, I think, something that wouldn't need, formal DPA involvement, and that's always, I think, a given. So that sounds like absolutely doable. I was more thinking if there's a need or a desire to do more.
Well, I would only say that if we're there, it would be a good opportunity to keep the ball rolling in a sense, right? Maybe we have some new updates by that time, and either formal or informally meet for an hour or two. I think might be good if everybody's there or whoever's there.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's still a bit of time to discuss that, so maybe we can do it via a survey, or, of course, it also depends on who will go, right? So the people who will be there should probably be those who decide whether they want something or not. But I mean, we have July and August, but as Jim said, we should probably then reach out to DPA leadership and discuss whether if we want something to coordinate it relatively soon.
And maybe some thoughts to add. We now, of course, identify new working areas, so to say, new focus areas after the in-person meeting, and might be indeed, as you were just sharing, to have an active follow-up to keep the ball rolling. I think that's a great idea. And maybe also what we could try to do is see if there's some synergy that we can create with regards to specific topics that are being discussed also within the DPA. And one of the things is also reimbursement. Another topic is, for example, all the AI acts that are now being implemented everywhere, like Canada, UK, Europe, US. So yeah, we could also think about making that a kind of sharing. Where are we, and is there anything that we can share actually better. And including maybe also CIP, because there are also some working groups there. And I know that we keep doing that, but I think it's always good when you have an in-person meeting to highlight that again. Yeah, in person comes always something more out than virtual. So I'm a favor.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks a lot. All right, let's move on. There were a few things. So circulating tumor DNA field. There were 2 papers that arrived us, so quick plugs here. One about classification using plasma cell-free DNA methylomes. So the ctDNA field reaches methylation, and a phenomenal paper by 3 authors in Nature about the practical recommendations for ctDNA in clinical testing and clinical decision-making. Beautiful figures. I think it's already clear that this field is much more complicated than initially anticipated, and this is a great summary. 2 quick pointers for in the DEI field. This is a term that I haven't heard before, and if you look within the abstract, it's called the TMEM doorway. For those who are acquainted with the tumor microenvironment and the so-called pro-metastatic tumor microenvironment, it's apparently the doorway to metastasis. And as you can see, some of these discrepancies were tied here to racial disparities and a strong trend towards a certain subset of diseases. So in other words, part of this doorway is tumor infiltrating lymphocytes. So I know many of you are interested in this. So a quick plug here from NPJ. And then another paper here, which is, you know, of all the different things, I'm sure you've seen many online aspects of large language models or ChatGPT. This was an interesting approach to discuss sort of when you assign AI tasks to different people in your, let's call it team or educational setting. You know, if you're a mentor, if you're a tutor, and, you know, how to actually use it. And, you know, there's certain risks associated with that. So great overview. And I thought it was definitely interesting to read. So please take a look. Patient advocacy, there's a lot going on. One specific plug, I think I saw Brittany on the call here, is that there is a so-called Future and Focus meeting planned for September. So as you know, Friends of Cancer Research is our patient advocacy group from the beginning and participating here. So thanks a lot. Brittany, do you want to say a few things about this exciting project and event?
Sure, I can just give a very brief overview. So we've been working really since almost the beginning of the year with a multi-stakeholder working group, many represented from some PICC members, on developing a white paper that's specifically looking at the use of digital pathology tools as well as AI/ML in oncology drug development. And then also some of those potential regulatory, clinical, and scientific challenges that arise with use of these tools. And so the white paper that we'll be putting out in advance of this meeting will hopefully start to begin to outline some proposals to facilitate, you know, robust development and use of these tools. But we see this as just a really kind of a first step to hopefully have a robust discussion with the field on use of these tools in oncology, but also kind of a landing, jumping off point. We're interested in developing a demonstration project similar to our other harmonization efforts, which I know we've discussed and presented on with this group before. And so definitely kind of a stay tuned, more to come from this meeting and as we continue on with shaping what that looks like.
Fantastic. Thank you, Brittany. Until then, wait, there's one more slide there. There's also other meetings that Friends is organizing that are highly relevant to this group, but we wanted to specifically make that plug. In terms of additional papers, you will see on the meeting update page, there are many, many different resources. As a quick overview, there was a fantastic AI in medicine paper, and it was in molecular medicine. So on the next slide, you will see they have a very good visual outline of the molecular techniques That's the first figure. The second is about machine learning, and then how to bring these two arguably complex technologies together. I would say the regulatory focus was a little bit short. If anyone's interested to write a little comment, I'm very welcome to, or I'm happy to join. Next slide is a brief letter that is actually discussing some of the accuracy of some generative AI models in complex diagnostics. There was a challenge. So if you haven't seen this, I think it's a short letter in JAMA, which is really great. And then two platforms. On the next slide, Sönksen and from the group of Dimitris Bertsimas, and a very interesting multimodal framework for healthcare applications. And then the next slide is the paper by Alexandros Karagiris. He gave a presentation during the PyCC meeting. Now the paper is out in Nature Machine Intelligence. The author list is actually too long to be portrayed on the title page, which says something about their power and their ability to do appropriate diplomacy. The platform is really phenomenal. And then the next slide, I want to give a brief plug on some of the things that we mentioned today. Is we have had, like, for example, the decision summary session with Paige, or Brandon's fantastic seminar on multi-reader studies. So we have upcoming presentations that are currently being scheduled. One is with the foundation from the NIH, then Alexis Karagiris about MedPerf. And if you have others, or please, again, thank you for sending the papers and all the work that you've been doing. But if you have suggestions for other presentations, please make use of this platform. It is working. We have thousands of hits. The website is roaring. We're still working on the indexing that will hopefully work at some point towards the end of the year. But if you have other suggestions other than those two already sort of pre-assigned presentations, that would be great. And then our next meeting, I think, will be August 30th. And with that, we have a few more minutes for questions or suggestions, etc. Or just chatting.
And do a shameless plug.
Oh yeah, please.
Let me just, so I just want to let people know that API, I'm co-leading with Mike Feldman with the DPAI workshop, and it's coming up in September. We're actually doing it physically. So we're going to see the Mayo Clinic's operations and such. So I just pasted the link in the chat. We've got a pretty good lineup in the sense that it's a little different than before. I mean, instead of focusing on just AP, we're actually going across into lab medicine as well as molecular. So AI applications across the board. So it's going to be a little bit of a pivot from what we were doing in the past. It's just going to cross everything in pathology. So
that's great. Thank you.
Thank
Can
you.
probably add that to the calendar. And this is also September, right? Yep.
Yeah, September.
Nice. Other plugs or comments?
Maybe at a future conference or a future workshop, we can delve a little bit more. I had a chance to talk a lot about the digital pathology codes. There's a lot of vagaries around it. And this is something that people might be very interested to hear about, trying to get some clarification on some of the new codes. But if you look at the new codes, for instance, like there's one for EM, but you need to use whole slide imaging. And as far as I know, there's not really a whole slide imager for things like EM that really does it. So, you know, some of the codes may not be technologically applicable at this point in time, but it's kind of nice to have anyway.
But as far as I understood it, is the EM code is for the plastic sections on a regular glass slide when you select which grid you would use, and those can be scanned. But I agree with you that the intricacies of how to build out category 3 codes in our LIMS systems is actually very tricky. Like that's a very more like an IT topic, right? I think maybe we can make that a topic, because I think many of the API folks are probably well aware how that's done, but writing a mini guide so that other people who are in private practice and, you know, smaller settings can do it as well would be great.
Yeah, there's a section in the AMA that actually talks about what's within scope. And I don't think they clarified, for instance, that with the plastic little grids, they sort of put it there as whole site images and static images are out and certain things. So I think it just needs further clarification depending on what it is. But anyway, that's a downstream topic that we all can deal with.
I think that's a great suggestion. All right. It's 4 o'clock. Thank you very much again. And I hope to see you in August, and please keep up the good work.
Thank you.